And from Christian Ganter, would losing to Mexico in the semifinal be seen as a failure? I think it has to be. The standard's been set there for Canada in CONCACAF, in CONMEBOL, even given last year's Copa America, that they have to go out and they have to beat Mexico. And if they haven't, then that's a bit of a step back from where they were, the teams that they were competing with. And when you're looking at World Cup preparation as well, these are the teams that you have to beat. You have to play the games that matter. I asked Jesse Marsh after the semifinal loss at Copa America, just how much it mattered to play these, critical games, get more games with big stakes. And there's not that opportunity for this Canadian team if they don't beat Mexico. They need that final. They need the pressure of a trophy on the line because ideally they want to be facing pressure similar to that at the World Cup a year from now. And then, they want to have similar situations with a different group of players and some of the same players at the Gold Cup as well. But they absolutely have to beat Mexico. And if they don't, it's an absolute failure.
I disagree. I think it's a massive missed opportunity. A failure would mean that they are, in fact, worse off than they were before. And I disagree that would be the case. This is going to be a home match for Mexico. The Mexican national team is I think, in a better place heading into this window into 25 than they were in 24. So they will have all of the pressure. Canada's had some great results recently against opposition where they couldn't share the field with. We have this expectation very much so that Canada could win and maybe feel like should win. But I really think if they lose in that semi in a tight game, or they lose 2-0 and they've played their way, we will be talking about it, and we will find ways to speak positively about it and not feel so end of the world, because there is still an opportunity in the summer, with a very different team in the Gold Cup. But I really think it will be more so a massively missed opportunity to have that final and play against the States than an absolute failure, as you coined it.
So yeah, I say we just can't get caught too far in the narratives, because I think for the narratives this is Canada's best team. This is a moment for them to become the kings of CONCACAF. For Mexico on their side, this is one of the worst Mexico teams. This is a team, that's in ruin compared to where they were 5, 10, 15 years ago. At the same time, Canada hasn't beat a team like this in a situation like this, if you think about it, in this generation, because every time they've made a step forward, it's always been the US Mexico, kind of like a wall stopping them. I think 2021 Gold Cup, they make a great run of the semifinals, lose to Mexico. In the Nations League in 2023, where they made the final, they get there beating a Panama. They didn't have a statement win over a Mexico or the US. Then they fell to the US in the final itself. The reality is they don't have that win under their belt of you beat a US or Mexico in like a semifinal or a final. So the fact they can achieve both in a matter of a week, it's great. But at the same time, they haven't done that. That isn't something where we've looked like this team's been there. This group is still in a phase where they have to get over that hump. So I think because of that, it isn't an absolute failure, because it is a big hump to get over. Despite Mexico's failures, they still have some good talent. They're a veteran team. They're going to kick the shit out of Canada, which is not fun in a game like that. Fans, like you mentioned, are going to be pro-Mexico. I think there's many reasons where Canada could fall in a one-off game. They haven't been together in 5 months too. All those sort of factors. So I think it's something for Canada. I'll be gravely disappointed if they don't win, because this is a sort of moment where they can prove they level up as a team, and this will bode well. But to position it as a failure, I think, is disrespectful to Mexico, and I don't think that's fair to them, given the sort of credence they still carry in a sort of game like this.
If they don't win, if Canada doesn't win, does this change your expectations for the World Cup next year? Like we've been talking about best case scenario being a quarterfinal, heck, even a semifinal. We've talked about it at points if everything goes perfectly right. Does this change the expectations or hopes for the World Cup next year if Canada, goes out and loses 2-0 and looks kind of listless against Mexico, Brendan?
Who's talking about Canada reaching the semifinal of the World Cup next year?
I think we mentioned it back in the summer.
That's
it's a very if the bracket lines up,
yeah,
like it's not
the same way that it was miraculous Morocco reached the semifinals at the World Cup in Qatar. I suppose that there's obviously a statistical possibility of that. When it comes to expectation or measurement, I think that that's not productive at all. To kind of have that thought. To your original question of does this change expectations ahead of the World Cup? If they do go through this year without having won the Nations League or without having won the Gold Cup. I do think that there will be a mental block that they have, and a lot of self-doubt within the team that could hinder them at the World Cup next year. And where the belief that we just spoke about, like, well, it could happen to reach the semifinal, isn't even there. So I do think that it would be much better for the psyche of the team as a whole, in addition to the competitive experience, that they win a trophy this year. And I would feel like at the end of it, I would feel as though not coming away with one trophy at all this year, I'd be more inclined to start using that word failure. Not absolute and grave failure as you described, but I would be more inclined to lean that way. I do think that this year ends with Canada winning at least one trophy.
They do need the statement victory, I think, because if you're going to go in the World Cup and realistically look like something where I think, again, as a host, it's not always fully realist, but as a host, you should always believe you can make a run because you're going to get a favorable draw. You're going to be in pot one. Things are going to line up for you. You're going to be playing games at home. It's not unreasonable, but if I'm looking at it from Canada's perspective, until they get a statement win, their road to a semifinal is going to lie kind of like Copa, if you think about it. Like Copa, for as fun as the run is, if you're actually going to sit back and break it down now that we've had some chance to look at it, like getting past Chile and Peru isn't as big of an achievement as it felt at the time, just because this isn't the Peru of the last 5 years. This Chile team is not the team that won back-to-back Copa Americas. Even getting past Venezuela, that's a team that historically underperforms in big moments. They've never made a World Cup. They've never made the semis of a Copa America. The reality is, in this tournament, Canada still did fall up short against Argentina. That's not a bad thing. It's not like suggesting, they've lost Argentina, like this is a terrible team. But the reality is, in most scenarios, if you're going to make a deep run at the World Cup, you're going to have to beat Argentina. You're going to have to beat a team of that caliber. Heck, even against Uruguay, they came close to doing it, and they kind of threw it away in a moment where, yes, it's a third place game, but they could have at least been like, look, we beat Uruguay. Like, we've been there, done that. So I think that for me, this Nations League represents a moment to, like I mentioned earlier, they don't have a statement win like that against the U.S. or Mexico. That's a good place to start, because the reality is U.S., Mexico, they're top 15, top 20 teams on paper until proven otherwise. If you can beat them in a moment like this, it at least gives you a little more confidence that if they head into a game against, I don't know, Germany in the round of 16, you're like, okay, Canada, at least they've proven they can go out there and give it a shot. Whereas right now, all we know is that they'll go out and give them a good game, but they still are technically looking for that first marquee statement win.